Today, we're going to be talking about the damaging consequences of emotional numbing and what you can do to show up fully present by opening to the full range of feeling, developing emotional intelligence, and why that's so crucial. I'm Ben Ufana, so let's dive into it. For years, I've had people either coming in to work with me individually are showing up to my classes that were so disconnected, so shut down emotionally. And I found it very challenging to work with many of these individuals. In my classes, for instance, I'd have all these people in the class, and I would be taking them into this intensive meditation process. I'd have them connecting to their life experiences, whatever they were going through, whatever challenges they were facing, have them bring that into their awareness, connect with what they feel in response to it. And by doing so, I would help them to process or digest both their lived experiences and their subsequent emotional responses. And yet, some of these individuals who turn up in my classes every now and then were so disconnected that they could not even access or identify what they felt in response to what they'd gone through. If they went through a breakup and say, well, okay, close your eyes, picture that person, imagine they're directly in front of you. How does it feel? I don't know. And they're just like flat. I think the clinical term is they lack effect. I'd go to each person and I have them describe like what's going on internally, what they're feeling in response to what they've gone through. The person who had shut down emotionally would veer off into these long ass narratives, the storytelling, when everyone else is in this deep meditative space. And yet you have the individual who's so shut down emotionally, when they wander off telling these stories or narratives, they pull everybody else out of state. And so it put me in a position of I had to shut them up. I couldn't let them keep talking, verbal diarrhea, because if they did, it would wreck the whole experience for everyone else. So what I do is I'd say, okay, you can feel the chair supporting your body, right? You can feel that. You can feel the shoes on your feet. You can feel that, can't you? And when they say yes, I'd say, okay, then just focus on that. When I'd work with people individually that were so numb and shut down emotionally, be doing session and afterwards it's like, well, what did you feel? What was your experience like? And it's like, I don't know, I didn't feel anything. For me, it's disappointing because they can't really tell anything happened. It's very unfortunate for them too, because they had shut down to such a degree emotionally. They didn't register. It didn't register with them the healing, the transformation that's occurring within their body. The other unfortunate thing too is that when they're so shut down emotionally, their bodies are not as responsive. They're not as malleable. A lot of times their bodies are dense, they're armored. They don't get as much out of the sessions. What I find is that a lot of the individuals who were that shut down or numb, disconnected emotionally, usually don't stick around very long. Maybe they'll do a session or two and disappear. Those who have followed through, for the most part, as they continue to work with me, that range of emotional expression or sensitivity opens up. They become much more connected to their feelings, aware of their emotional responses to the various events or challenges or whatever they're dealing with in their life. They're more expressive, self aware, connected to their bodies. It's profound change. It's just getting them to stick around long enough so that these changes can happen. People who are so disconnected emotionally, a lot of times they're so much in their heads and therefore disconnected from their bodies. They overcompensate by talking things to death. They'll use way more words than absolutely necessary to convey what it is that they are wanting to communicate. They tend to speak in long monologues, often in a very monotone voice, and it leaves you feeling as though you've given a quart of blood. In many ways, this is a compensation for their profound disconnect from their own internal sustenance. There's a paradox when it comes to emotional numbing. For some, it may feel as though it provides a refuge from the storm, a place where we can shelter from the hurt and the fear and the sense of vulnerability. But in doing so, it's creating these walls. We're not just shutting out the realities of our lives that we find distressing and what we feel in response to them, but we're also shutting out everything that can nourish us, that feeds and sustains us. In our effort to escape the suffering, we're trading away our ability to experience the most beautiful moments of our lives. Emotional numbing, it's not just a strategy for survival, it's a slow withdrawal from everything that makes us truly alive. It's a protective response that often arises in reaction to trauma, chronic stress, prolonged emotional pain. It's a coping mechanism that allows us to distance ourselves from overwhelming feelings, to buffer against emotional overload. For so many people, what often begins as a form of self protection can transform into a prison, trapping us in a place of disconnection from our feelings, our bodies, and the people around us. When we're shutting down emotionally, the brain responds by dialing down its sensitivity, numbing our feelings to create a sense of safety and distance. And central to this process are key brain regions. For instance, the amygdala, which triggers our emotional responses, the prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for decision making and emotional regulation, the hippocampus, which links emotion to memory, the insula, which connects us to our bodily sensations and is partly responsible for self awareness. Also, under the constant strain and stress, the brain's hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, or HPA, becomes activated, releasing cortisol in response to these perceived threats. And over time, this persistent cortisol release impairs the functioning of these various brain regions, further hindering our ability to process our emotions effectively. When we're numbing out emotionally, we're actively creating a profound void within ourselves, a disconnection from not only our feelings, but our physical bodies, sensations, and the authenticity of our lived experiences. The moments that should inspire us and enliven us, spending time with friends, the affection that we experience when we share an intimate bond with someone, or even expressing ourselves creatively, lose their color and vibrancy. As a result, we become spectators in our own lives, watching from the sidelines as the richness of our existence has somehow evaporated. Emotional numbing has a profound effect upon our relationships, building an invisible wall, acting as a layer of plexiglass that separates us from those we truly care about, making it difficult for us to experience true intimacy, vulnerability, or connection in our relationships. When we're shutting down emotionally, our experience to express love, to experience intimacy, or genuinely care for the well being of others diminishes. It mutes the warmth and the tenderness we might otherwise feel. And it also contributes to misunderstandings, leaving our partners, our friends, our family members feeling unheard, unloved, and even rejected. And it may also trigger their own feelings of hurt and isolation and confusion. As I mentioned earlier, the diminished activity in critical areas of our brain, such as the prefrontal cortex and the amygdala and the hippocampus, these areas that play a vital role in our decision making and emotional processing and memory, as they begin to function less effectively, and our brain adapts to this constant state of disconnection. There's a reduction and our cognitive flexibility, a weakened ability to process both our lived experiences and our emotional responses. Chronically suppressing our emotions results in rigidity. We're losing flexibility both in body and mind. Our thoughts become fixated. We become stuck in limiting patterns, and it makes it difficult for us to break free or to create meaningful change in our lives. It's harder for us to learn, to flow, to adapt to the inevitable changes that life brings our way. We lose that spark, the momentum, and the passion that drives us forward. Our world begins to shrink. We become narrow minded, closed off to new experiences and possibilities. Also, consider that the stresses and the unprocessed emotions don't just disappear, they actually accumulate within our bodies, creating this heavy, congestive residue. And the largest accumulation for the majority of people is in the abdominal region. In addition, all these stresses and emotions form the layers of muscular body armor. That's where our neck, our back, our shoulders, everything becomes very tight and tense. This modern day world we're living in also contributes massively to our emotional numbing. We numb ourselves by overeating, consuming heavily processed foods with artificial ingredients and refined sugars. Also, with our use of tobacco or alcohol and other recreational drugs, prescription medications that we take to quell the anxiety, our emotional pain. Also, our consumption of media, especially short form content that bombards us with quick and superficial bites of information, and our use of digital media with this emphasis on instant gratification and a constant distraction that keeps pulling us away from the slow introspective processes that are required for us to truly understand and experience our inner world. The more we depend upon this technology to entertain us or to provide some semblance of connection to other people in the world around us, the more we drift away from our inner emotional landscape. And that leaves us detached from the richness of our human experience. And having anesthetized ourselves, we invariably lose our capacity for deep emotional engagement, becoming numb to not only to the distressing realities of our lives, but also to that which can nourish and inspire us. In addition, we live in a culture in which vulnerability is often seen as weakness and emotional expression is often discouraged in favor of maintaining appearances or keeping it together. Also, the demands of our modern day world. Working such long hours, lengthy commutes, the financial pressures that many of us are under, the constant juggling of responsibilities can all leave little room for rest and self reflection. The true path of healing lies in our ability to allow ourselves to experience the full spectrum of our emotions, including excitement and anticipation, as well as sorrow and anger and fear, without turning away. And it's through embracing even the uncomfortable emotions that we begin to transform and heal ourselves. Because of the traumas, the abuses that I experienced in my own childhood and adolescence, I had so numbed out, so shut down emotionally. My own emotional responses and even bodily sensations didn't fully register. And that was a big part of why I fell into this pattern. In my mid 20s, I would form attachments to women who were unavailable or disinterested and sometimes quite abusive, and why I continue to hold on to these individuals and to the relationships that weren't working. And it left me trapped in this destructive cycle of reenactment. Difficult as it was, I had to train myself to fully feel, to experience my emotional responses whenever and wherever they arose. When all these repeated experiences of unrequited love and abandonment and relationships blowing up on me is evoking some of the worst pain imaginable. But I had to teach myself to dive into the depth of what I was feeling at the time. And I would breathe from the middle of what was at that moment just excruciating pain. As I kept breathing, at some point that pain would break open and I could feel it coming out of my body in waves. And underneath that, I would experience these profound emanations of warmth flowing from within. As I did that, I could feel my own connection growing to this authentic core within and also to the higher power. There are also times when I would become so emotionally triggered, maybe it was a comment or an action by someone, and I'd feel these powerful emotions arising, but I couldn't stay connected to what I was feeling. There was maybe some defense mechanism. It would just shut off at some point and I would feel numb again. I had to make this concerted effort to keep bringing myself back to what I was feeling. And sometimes, even if it was just physical sensation or slight feelings, I would bring myself back. I'd feel what I could. I'd be breathing from the depth of any feelings, any sensations. And the more I did that, it began to bridge the gaps. Not only did my self awareness grow, but my own ability to feel my emotional responses increased and my processing capacity, my ability to process whatever lived experiences I was going through and my emotional responses to them, it all increased. As I continued to explore my own inner universe, I made a daily practice of sitting in a comfortable position with my eyes closed. And I would bring my awareness to any concern, any situation, any interaction that I was having, maybe with another individual, and then I would breathe softly and deeply into any feelings or bodily sensations that would arise. And there were many instances where I only experienced physical sensations within my body. It could be a tightness or tension or fatigue or tingling or warmth, sometimes heat, whatever I was feeling, I would fully immerse my awareness in those physical sensations and keep following those sensations or feelings if they did arise. As I worked with this practice, even if it initially started with physical sensations, sometimes it would precipitate the emergence of emotions that were held deeper within my body, operating from the subconscious. If they didn't surface during that practice session, they would often surface later in the day or in the coming days. What I'm describing here is so crucial because it's the emotions, these stresses that we hold in our body that are the driving forces behind many of the dysfunctional patterns that we are enacting in our relationships and other areas of our lives. As I became more adept at the sitting practice, I made a concerted effort to stay connected to whatever I was feeling in my body, breathing into any sensations or any emotions while I was walking or driving or interacting with other people, even in the midst of conversations with another individual. Despite the fact that I was doing all this practice, there were still significant gaps in my awareness. I think part of it has to do with we develop or establish these defense mechanisms initially to protect ourselves, but after some time, they no longer serve us. They leave us very disconnected and they create these profound barriers that can impede our ability to heal and grow, to evolve. There's a huge problem with that because all these emotions that remain trapped within our bodies that are operating from the subconscious mind, they perpetuate a lot of the crazy ass dysfunction that so many of us are enacting in our lives. And when we're trapped in that cycle of dysfunction, it perpetuates our suffering. So I was willing to try out any therapeutic modalities that held promise. Deep tissue body work I found very helpful because a lot of this emotion remains trapped in the musculature of the body. And so getting the body work, whether it was deep tissue massage or rolfing, had the effect of breaking a lot of these emotions loose, bringing them up into my conscious awareness. Once the emotions were in my conscious awareness, I could breathe into them, I could digest them, work my way through them. So that facilitated greater healing, integration. Also, back in the 90s, I had an opportunity to work with some extraordinarily gifted healers, one from Brazil, another from the Philippines, a few others. And whenever I do these sessions, So much of the emotion that was trapped in my body, not only did it bring it up, but it was helping to transform or transmute that stagnant, putrefied emotion that had been stored in my body for decades. The problem was that there are so few of these individuals who worked on this level. But the fact that at the age of 20, I had the opportunity to train with one of the last surviving traditional doctors or medicine men among the Kiowa Indian tribe, Horace Dalkai. And part of our training involved going on the vision quest, uh, traditional Native American healing practice where you go out, you're fasting alone in the mountains, 4 days and nights, no food, no water. And there were times during the vision quest where it felt like a near death experience. I'd feel these other forces or beings descend into my body. I would be reliving experiences from my past, often traumas that I had gone through or other stressful or deeply wounding events. All that would be coming back. A lot of these events, maybe I had a vague recollection or sometimes no memory at all. And yet it's all coming back, all the strong, powerful emotions I'd experienced at that time. I'd find myself flooded with these emotions, and I could feel myself digesting both these lived experiences, my emotional responses, and I would come out the other side feeling lighter, feeling freer. And as a result, I was becoming more resourceful, more capable. My range of motion was expanding. And the whole way that I engaged and related to other people and the world around me was much healthier. The fact that I've trained for years with this traditional native doctor, have gone through so many vision quests, enables me as the other Native American traditional doctors and healers of other ancient indigenous traditions, I work as a conduit, allowing this presence to work through me that facilitates the same process within those I work with. This presence working through me will take these lived experiences that you, other individuals that I've worked with, have gone through. It's transforming, transmuting these lived experiences, those highly charged emotions that are stored in the body. At the same time, building that foundation so that you're much more present within your body, more engaged, capable, and living a more meaningful and fulfilling life. In a world that equates vulnerability with weakness, it's important for us to reframe it as one of the most powerful means through which we can heal and transform ourselves. It's inner willingness to be open and raw and real that we find true connection, both within ourselves and with others. When we dare to let down our defenses and to embrace our emotions, it expands our potential for more meaningful relationships, creating a space for trust, empathy, and true intimacy. Allowing ourselves to truly experience our authentic emotional responses not only deepens our bonds with those around us, but it also leads to a more vibrant, fulfilling, and engaging life. You see, the path forward from emotional numbing is about embracing life in all its complexity with the courage to feel and the strength to stay present. Even in the midst of discomfort. And by doing so, we cultivate resilience, self compassion, and healthy coping mechanisms. And a big part of that is learning to work effectively with our emotional responses. We all, to some extent, have numbed ourselves, we've disconnected from our emotions. As a result, we hold the traumas, the stresses, the unprocessed emotions within our body, along with the impressions of our lived experiences that we haven't fully digested. And yet, it's crucial to recognize that no matter how distant or disconnected we've become, the path to emotional connection, exhilaration, and fulfillment is always within reach. It starts with a choice to feel, to allow ourselves to be vulnerable, and to embrace life's complexity with openness. I want to thank you for joining me today. And if you haven't already done so, be sure to look below and click like and subscribe. That's all I have for today. Bye for now.